All right, welcome back to Rock and Roll Rabbit Hole.
Yeah, we're back with one of my favorite songs of all times.
Yes.
I really, really enjoy the moment that this, brought to rock and roll, and kind of a refreshing moment, I would say. Would you say?
Well, and it's also in kind of in honor of Queen Elizabeth II, who died in September 8th, and so we decided to choose this song.
Yeah.
It's called "God Save the Queen." It's a great tribute to her and her regime.
I don't think it's very tributey.
It's not? Oh.
It's not very tributey.
We can talk about that later. She died at age 196.
Yeah.
So, sorry, 96, not 196.
Well,
Just seemed like that long.
She was always there, quite a rock for Britain and for us Anglophiles here in the States that kind of enjoy all things British.
We have some of that British blood. We did not get dismissed to Australia.
Nope.
So,
Which
is a thing.
None of our ancestors.
I have no Australian
exiled.
blood in me, thank goodness.
Right.
So yeah, I didn't have any criminals in my ancestry.
Man.
Apparently,
You think that's all that's down there?
Well, that's what they would do. They would take the criminals and just ship them off to Australia.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. So Queen Elizabeth, by all accounts, a very decent and good person, right? But the monarchy can be kind of a point of contention. So the Sex Pistols definitely, took that to the mainstream with this 1977 77
song.
hit. Yeah. So
And it was a hit. We're going to get into that more. I think we should start with the tail of the tape before
Tail
we
of the
start
tape?
getting into the. Are we ready?
let's do it.
1, 2, 3.
It never gets old. The Tale of the Tape. God Save the Queen is a song by the English punk rock band the Sex Pistols. It was released as the band's second single and was later included on their only studio album.
Yep.
Never Mind the Bollocks. Here's the Sex Pistols.
Yeah.
The song's title is taken directly from the British national anthem, and the song was released during Queen Elizabeth II's Silver Jubilee in 1977. The record's lyrics, as well as the cover, were controversial at the time, maybe even still controversial, I'm going to say. The Independent Broadcasting Authority refused to play the song, and the BBC instituted a total ban of its airing. No better marketing than that. The original title for the song was No Future, with the lyrics themselves being an expression of the band's view of the monarchy or any individual or establishment of authority. God Save the Queen made it only to number 2 in the official UK singles charts.
And we'll talk about that later,
Yes. Led to accusations by some that the chart was fixed. The song did reach number 1 on the New Musical Express charts in the UK. I'm not as familiar with that, but British people probably are. The song topped the UK streaming charts 45 years after the initial release of the song.
Amazing.
In perfect timing, as 2022 marked Queen Elizabeth II's Platinum Jubilee celebration. So the song went number 38 in New Zealand. Not as much kind of angst down there, I would say. Norway, number 3. Sweden, number 2. UK, official charts company, number 2. UK, the NME, as before mentioned, number 1.
Yep. Well,
So
there you go.
The tail. Yeah.
Tail of the tape. We are off and running, and now we have the opening ceremonies.
Yes.
So we were unable to find actual British beer, but we did get some Carlsberg Pilsner. Probably the best beer in the world.
Probably.
But we got this because even though it's a Danish beer, when I was the 2 times I was in England, I drank a lot of Carlsberg. It's a very popular beer in Carlsberg. And Pete Best, the former Beatle drummer, actually did a commercial for Carlsberg back in the 80s. Where he literally said, and probably the best beer in the world.
I love it. So they're very popular in Britain.
Or he said, I'm sorry, probably the Pete Best beer in the world. That's what he said, yeah.
The Pete Best. I like it.
So,
if you got that name, you got to use it, right?
Exactly. I'm sure that's why they contacted him.
Often ridiculed Mr. Pete Best for being kicked out of the Beatles.
But seems to have a decent sense of humor about it.
He does.
Now, because they paid him off for several $1 million a few years ago when the
Finally, the anthology
came
made
out.
a
Yeah,
little money. But don't
he drummed on several tracks in that first. Oh yeah.
Do you sense a little bitterness in his?
A little, yeah.
I mean,
And
pretty
I've met him, and
easygoing.
I interviewed him once, and a little bit of bitterness.
We're not paid by the Carlsbergers
No, we are not.
as of yet, but we
Let's
will
hope that
toast
we can-
the Queen. May she rest in peace.
And that probably is the best beer in the world.
Does it take you back?
It does.
Take you back to Liverpool?
Liverpool.
I like it.
Bloody Liverpool.
So, the Sex Pistols. You can't make up a better origin story for a band than a band that formed in Malcolm McLaren's sex shop on the King's Road, stole their equipment, and were banned from radio. That's like made for movies and miniseries, which there is a miniseries out right now, I believe. So, but it's kind of, you know how they kind of juke up? Don't you feel like they always enhance the bios for artists? You really don't have to do any enhancement for the.
Well, and like the bios for our band, I put that you're a neurosurgeon.
Do you? Okay.
So
quite a bit of enhancement
steady
there for
hands.
sure. Yes,
Steady
steady
hands.
hands.
But you know, the thing that like for me is like when Queen Elizabeth died a few weeks back,
Yeah.
I wasn't moved in any way. I'm an American.
Oh.
And I get that we came from there, but I never really understood the interest by Americans in what's going on with the royal family. It's just like it's detached for me,
Yeah.
you know. And the funny thing is, that said, I understand because I remember the night that Princess Diana was killed in that car wreck.
Oh, that was hard.
I was at Bluegrass Brewing Company watching the Sharon Lawson Band.
Oh,
featuring drummer John Hayes,
Oh, nice.
who's our good friend and longtime drummer.
Yes.
And I remember that, like, people, the whisper started going around, Princess Diana's dead. She got killed in a car wreck. And I was like, no way.
Tragic.
And I was there with several friends. And so the fact that I have that memory tells you how pervasive it is in American culture, even though it has very little to do with us.
Well, it has very little to do with us, but that was a heartbreaker right there.
Sure.
And I think that,
She was a tragic character.
Yeah.
She didn't want to be there, I don't think. I never thought that Diana wanted to be there necessarily.
No, I completely agree with that. But I just think our country is just sort of, they always have a lasting and, sort of a innate interest in the mother country. It just is one of those things. And the royal family itself represents kind of like, sort of the height of fanciness and protected living or whatever. So it's always just kind of feels interesting to me, the height of style, Queen Elizabeth seemed like probably a very dignified,
seemed like person. A lovely person, yeah.
She had to go through a lot of, I think, hiccups with her son being a little crazy and a lot of things have gone on with the royal family.
But she liked dogs, so.
Oh, there you go, you can. That's one of your people there.
Yeah.
But what do you know about how the Sex Pistols themselves came together as a band? Do you know a lot about that?
I really don't. Talk to me.
Okay, the Malcolm McLaren had his a fashion store on the King's Road, and they served at first like teddy boys. They had teddy boy clothes, which were sort of like what our greasers, I suppose.
Early Beatles, yeah.
Early Beatles.
So the Beatles were teddy boys.
But they had really fine fashions out of this shop, and then they later changed it to a fetish shop. I guess he was just always trying to shock people and do something new. And Steve Jones kind of shoplifted there quite often, and so he sort of knew Malcolm. And then Glenn Matlock, the bassist, also was a visitor to the shop quite often. And then Johnny Rotten would occasionally, or John Lydon would occasionally come in with John Simon Ritchie, two Johns, which was later Johnny Rotten and Sid Vicious. And but Malcolm McLaren had, I've heard that he had Alice Cooper shop in the store one day and buy a shirt. And he got to thinking about rock and roll and obsessing on maybe forming a band. And, the Beatles were only about 10 years old at this point. So like, it just seemed like another good way to make money and to cause a stir. And so he got Steve and Paul to start practicing as a band in the shop, and they were looking for a lead singer. And I guess they had Paul Cook at this time, probably the drummer as well. But the Malcolm's partner at the shop, which I'm gonna have to research that and I'll insert it here, but she recommended one of the Johns, but there's a debate on whether she was recommending actually Johnny or Sid Vicious, John Simon Ritchie, and not John Lydon, because she thought John Lydon was maybe had too much attitude and was too dangerous. But when they finally came back in the shop, Malcolm thought John Lydon looked like he fit the part, and he had been recommended, so he had him audition to the jukebox, and they played "I'm 18" by Alice Cooper, and he mimicked the song sort of as the Hunchback of Notre Dame, some real crazy, interesting thing. And so they, actually Steve and Glenn weren't as impressed, but Malcolm thought, there's the guy. Correctly so, because man.
Yeah.
Could they ever get a better spokesman for what they were trying to do?
Yeah. He was sort of like passively over the top, which was weird.
No, He owned it though, right?
Yeah.
It's sort of over the top and sneering and crazy.
But also sort of just like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
If you watch him, he's just like, it really is the punk aesthetic.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Maybe he was creating the punk aesthetic.
I think then that's definitely a possibility. I mean, a lot of people will owe that to the Ramones, but I think that the Sex Pistols may have gotten there first with that kind of thing.
They sort of perfected that.
And the Ramones were more poppy.
Right.
They were more. They got political later, but they were more about just writing weird songs and love songs and stuff that were meant to sound like Beach Boys songs, but they just couldn't sing.
Well, they certainly. I think they are partly responsible for the Sex Pistols being a thing. The Ramones. They played in Europe. And they say there weren't that many people there, but everybody that was there formed a band, is what I hear. Yeah. Like Billy Idol was there, like David Bowie was there, all this stuff. But anyway, they found John, and he's sort of an intellectual. Have you heard the guy's interviews? He's really swift,
Yeah.
But I thought the lyrics he wrote were fantastic. And like sort of this song here was just sort of a rant against authority, right?
And that's how it came across. Just a rebellion against the monarchy, and the punk fans hated the monarchy, and they wanted anything and everything that would criticize it, and they knew that. And that's again, like you said earlier, the song was initially had another title,
right?
No Future, and so I think Lydon came up with the idea to make it called "God Save the Queen."
I think Malcolm. Lydon wanted No Future. Malcolm saw God Save the Queen, which is also the title of the
national anthem, basically. Yeah.
So he knew that was provocative. If Malcolm's good at anything, it's being provocative. So he knew by naming it that, and there was some discussion over that. I think there may have even come to blows, but by naming it that, I think they really... they were set for all the conflict that they received, right? I mean, it probably helped it to get so big to name it that. What do you figure?
No, absolutely. And that's all the negative press it got, all that controversy made it a hit song.
Had to, right?
Of course. And
being banned,
Yeah.
What do kids want more than something they can't get, like...
Something they're not allowed to get.
Yeah, something
they're not allowed. They're told they can't have.
Yeah, but the backdrop of this whole thing was there were all kinds of strikes, labor strikes in England, and particularly I think the one that sets the biggest backdrop is the garbage strike. They said it went on for years. There was garbage just piling up on the streets. Yeah. Can you imagine? This was allegedly one of the hottest summers in Britain. Can you imagine the combination of a garbage strike and the hottest? I mean,
it's like late 1800s New York. There was no infrastructure.
It's crazy. But Lydon said, when you feel powerless, you will grab any power you can to retain some kind of self-respect.
Yeah.
So, kind of makes a lot of sense.
So the song was like released right around the time of her Silver Jubilee, which is her 25th year on the throne.
They scrambled to get the records out. Yeah.
And they had this big plan to play it on a boat,
Right.
so that they couldn't be arrested for playing it on land, and it didn't work out. The authorities, nevertheless, they were like, as soon as the boat comes in, we're gonna. So they never got to play it. They never got to do that.
They didn't get to that song. It was 2 days before
Right.
the Jubilee, and they got a boat ironically named the Queen Elizabeth.
Yeah.
And they got to play, I think, one song before they were. But what great publicity to be arrested and roughly handled.
And you know that played into the song getting attention. Probably more so than if they got to play it. If it had been ignored, probably would have gone by the wayside.
I
But
agree.
the authorities were like, "You will not play this song. Oh, you will not do this." Yeah.
So, do we want to get to the TV appearance? I think that is one of my favorite moments.
Yeah,
Did you see
go
the Bill Grundy show? I think it was called the Today Show.
Yeah.
But Bill Grundy was the host, and he was like he was a long time, respected host. Sort of like like a Dick Cavett would be here or something.
Yeah.
And
Dick Cavett. We're showing our age.
Yeah, but in the green room, I think
apparently we're 80.
Well, yeah, I think we're getting in that range. But anyway, they had free booze in the green room, and I think Steve Jones reports he drank 3 bottles of Blue Nun, which I can't imagine you could walk after that. But they came out feeling good,
I think 3 bottles of Carlsberg would do me in.
Right. So they have the Sex Pistols on stage with 4 members, I guess, of the Bromley contingent behind them. They're sort of punk rock groupie types, and Susie Sue was there from Susie and the Banshees. And but anyway, Bill Grundy he said, here they are, the Sex Pistols, not your clean Rolling Stones, he said, who were on trial for like heroin possession and crap at the time, But anyway, I thought that was a pretty good line. But he was sort of being very dismissive and looking down his nose. And he was apparently a little tipsy himself. And he goaded them into, well, not that they needed a lot of encouragement, but they did a little cursing on the air, which was apparently a huge no-no over there at the time. Did you see this interview?
I didn't see the clip, no.
Oh, it's crazy.
I read about it, but I didn't see the clip.
But John said actually Steve Jones said the F word first, and they missed it. Then John, under his breath, said that S word, and he said, "What did you say?" And he said, "Oh, nothing, just a rude word, And he goes, what was the rude word?" And of course, then he said it out loud. Then all hell broke loose in a way, and Grundy got disgruntled with them. Then he started flirting with Susie in the back row, which made Steve Jones especially mad, and so he started dropping F-bombs and calling him a dirty rata and all this stuff, which I don't know, exactly what that stuff is, but, and, it's what the British meanings are. But then the guy said, Grundy said, "You got 5 seconds left. Do you want to say anything else?" So he kept, just swearing off the air. So, which completely made the press swarm the next day. They lost their record deal. Grundy lost his job, and it was wild, So it was sort of a sabotage, even though it feels like the best publicity.
All in the name
ever.
of protocol, Yeah.
It was such an interesting, just an interesting moment, like one of the greatest moments in rock history, and certainly in punk rock history. It's a very punk moment. Also, the boat incident I felt like a similar thing.
Well, and that's like sort of the whole No Future thing. The song and all that surrounding publicity gave rise to the future of punk rock, and it's still going. And so
it is.
It's a weird irony, even though that the No Future was a whole different context. The fact that it gave rise to the future of something else is just so interesting and ironic to me.
It is kind of, yeah.
Well, like, that you said that, like, the BBC One banned it. They didn't. I don't think the BBC overall banned it. It was more of a BBC One's not going to do it, so most other stations didn't do it. They didn't touch it.
Right. Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Right. And so, but it, that sort of helped it become a hit. Because, like we talked about, the forbidden is always a sweeter fruit.
Oh, yeah. And most stores refused to carry it over there.
Yeah.
And so Virgin record stores had it. Richard Branson played a big part in this. He helped press the records and get them out.
Virgin, they said for a couple of weeks or whatever, they said, if you sell your own records, they won't be counted.
Right.
In the charts. And so Rod Stewart's I Don't Want to Talk About It was number one when everyone knows that God Save the Queen outsold it.
Rod Stewart just looms over this podcast, doesn't he? He always makes an appearance.
And then the whole irony of I don't want to talk about it. It's like, we don't want to talk about this song, and there's just Rod Stewart over there singing this dumb song. I mean, yeah, it's just funny. But it helped make the legend. That's what punk rock is.
It's purely a perfect story in the way that it was banned. It just, everything blew up in all the right ways to make life difficult for the Sex Pistols and for their manager and for their record company. But for a story, it's just kind of beautifully sabotaged, isn't it? Yeah. But I mean, Rod Stewart's song there was so safe, at the time and everything compared to this.
And that's what the establishment wanted. Safe.
Sure.
Like even like some charts just didn't even acknowledge that the song was out. God Save the Queen was out. They just left it off their charts completely.
Oh yeah.
So it's like this was the perfect sort of FU to the establishment.
Right.
The perfect FU to rock and roll, to the monarchy. That's what I think I love about the song most. That and like you always say, the guitars sound amazing.
That album is so beautiful.
The delivery is awesome.
Yeah, think about it. They're making their first album, and it sounds that good. It doesn't even hardly make sense. John delivers his vocal with such conviction and such confidence that he sounds like a veteran rocker, in a way. But he does have that youthful energy, right? And reckless abandon. Yeah. But the guitars are so great, and they only come out with the one album. Never mind the bollocks, here's the Sex Pistols. It's kind of a perfect thing in that way too, that they never went with another album that sounded a little different than one that sounded like a reggae album or something.
The Clash.
It remains to be this perfect thing, like if the Beatles just put out Sgt. Pepper's and that was it, something like that, or Revolver. I wanted to talk about, and this relates to the Beatles as well. The band formed at the Sex Shop, or SEX Shop, which is had it was based on fashions. Vivian Campbell is the name of Malcolm McLaren's partner, and she was like a fashionista and really cutting edge fashion designer. And so I felt like partly the look of the band is also what helped make this all come over, like her work. Much like the Beatles. What was Astrid's name? But Astrid and Stuart Sutcliffe, they were in that sort of German.
Astrid Kircher.
Okay, they were in that German sort of underground, avant-garde art scene.
Yeah.
So the Beatles came out with a look that kind of took the world by storm. I feel like the Sex Pistols kind of had a similar thing. Yeah. It made me wonder about these moments where it all just really comes together. The fashion is certainly a little bit of a part of it, Yeah. And John and those guys were part of that, and like safety pinning their clothes together. They said it's because they're poor, but it was obviously a statement.
Oh, it was, it was marketing, 100% marketing.
It's all marketing,
and that's fine. That's fine. So what's interesting to me is in later years, I'm sorry, but I think John Lydon is kind of a self-promotional kind of a jerk.
He can be.
I think he's a very, very egotistical kind of a prick.
He's abrasive.
But later years he called the song. It's just high camp. And
did he? Yeah.
One of the quotes I love was like, It was nothing more than a way of recognizing the working class. You certainly don't think it's going to be taken as a declaration of civil war.
Yeah.
But okay, and he's right in terms of the way it was intended. But taken as a declaration of civil war, yeah, of course it would be taken that way.
Yeah.
In that society,
it was revolution.
It was right. It was revolution. So don't give me that crap. Now, do I believe that he was being tongue in cheek? And that yes, I do. But the way it's going to be taken, no. Now you're bullshitting us.
Well,
you knew how it was going to be taken.
He gave the disenfranchised youths of Great Britain a rallying cry like no other to buck against the system, right? He said, I like this quote. He said, you don't write God Save the Queen because you hate the British people. You write it because you love them and you're fed up with seeing them mistreated. He was beat up on the streets and stuff for this. He actually had some tendons.
They got a knife, attacked with knives, and
Can you believe that, man?
Yeah.
He also said we declared war on England without meaning to.
Yeah.
So I thought that was an interesting. Here's one more good Leiden quote. We alienated the entire country. If they would have hung us at the Traitors' Gate, it would have been applauded by 56 million. So that's how ugly it got for them.
Yeah. And it was never their intention. They were just trying to express themselves.
Right.
But they had to know what was going to do. I mean, they had to know.
It was
with the timing. I mean, it was great marketing, but also it's okay, you've got to be ready to prepare for these consequences.
They were in the tinderbox starting a fire. There was he described their management as a monkey's tea party. Good band name, by the way.
It is. Or at least an album title.
Yes. Oh, it is, yeah. But Malcolm McLaren and John Lydon have gone back and forth with each other as who is more responsible for, the Pistols and their success and creating this perfect moment in rock history. And McLaren sees himself as sort of this Svengali character that put them together, and it was all his idea and his genius that did it. I feel like they were just some real rough dudes, but they actually ended up being fairly good on their instruments, other than Sid, who supposedly wasn't a very good bass player. But John's writing and vocal delivery, I think it was the magic.
Yeah.
It's why we're talking about it yet today. So...
Well, it's funny that Glenn Matlock got pushed out of the bands. Who?
Oh yeah, Glenn.
In favor of Sid, who was kind of a shitty bass player.
He wasn't. He just had the style.
Yeah.
And he was friends with John Lydon, Johnny Rotten.
Yeah.
Sid, what a train wreck he ended up being. Really, just awful. You know?
Yeah.
I think he was sort of a somewhat of a innocent kid, but he just kind of fell into just bad habits, and he was impressionable. Probably getting him in the Sex Pistols what ended up, with his ultimate demise.
Yeah.
He got on heroin, of course, and just got so bad, for him. His mother bought him the heroin that he OD'd on. She was on it too, apparently. So there's a wholesome.
I bet that was a fun Mother's Day celebration.
Oh man, can you imagine? But I think Glenn, they made fun of him for being a fan of the Beatles and just kind of being too sort of normal, But he seemed like probably a pretty good guy, Glenn. But he just didn't. I don't think it was very fun to tour with this band.
Oh yeah.
Most of their gigs in Europe got canceled because of the controversy, right? And then Malcolm had a genius idea to book a southern United States tour that ended in San Francisco, but they went through the Texas and everything, and it was just awful.
I read about that. Yeah, of course it was.
So John quit on stage when they finally got to Winterland in San Francisco. Yeah. It was like he was sabotaging them, right?
Yeah.
Why didn't they play New York, Detroit, Chicago, where people would kind of get what they were, more so being open to what they were doing, let's say.
Where there was punk going on and not the early days of ZZ Top.
Right. Yeah. It was the early days.
It was. It was the late 70s when he came on.
That brings up another good topic, not ZZ Top in particular, but I was thinking about this sort of coincided with disco.
Oh, yeah.
So I thought of like this as a fight or flight kind of thing. When things get really difficult, things were difficult in the United States economically, and things were rough in Britain with all these strikes and everything. But, I thought people either chose this sort of escapism, which was disco, or the sort of the fight, which was this sort of crusade of punk. Kind of an interesting take. Were you aware of this when you were a young lad?
No,
at all?
Not really. Because I was listening to just mainstream radio. So as a kid in America, all I heard was the disco and the...
We probably never heard these songs, did we?
No. I didn't get really exposed to the Ramones till like 5 or 6 years later. Early 80s. Yeah.
So they were sort of a New York thing, and it had to work its way to us, didn't it?
Yep. My parents would have hated it if I'd listened to this stuff. They would have hated it.
Would they kicked you out in the streets?
Probably at 12. And luckily I had a paper route. But
I have a list here that I got from Rolling Stone magazine. It's the 40 greatest one-album wonders, which I love the term one-album wonders.
Yeah.
And I thought the top 5 was particularly interesting. I won't bore the listeners with 40 of them, but number 5 was the Modern Lovers album, The Modern Lovers, eponymous, I guess. That's got that Roadrunner song, Jonathan Richman. That's a good album, right? One album and out. Jeff Buckley with Grace, that has Hallelujah, stuff like that. Like, of course, he...
Remember that, yeah.
Yeah, of course, he died, and couldn't make another one. Lauryn Hill, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill is number 3. So that's a fantastic album, which I don't understand how she didn't have another. Do you?
Right.
Right. I think she's doing gospel music maybe now.
That's why.
Yep, maybe so. 2, Derek and the Dominoes, Layla, and other assorted, love songs. But Derek and the Dominoes, really a super group. Yeah. So that was sort of something that came together. Of course, Dwayne Allman passed away, motorcycle wreck. But then number 1, never mind the bollocks, here's the Sex Pistols, so kind of had to be number 1. I looked through the list and I had to flip through, how they make you flip through?
Yeah, oh god.
I was thinking, I know it's going to be number 1, so.
I never would have thought number 1. I would have thought high.
Yeah.
I would have thought top 20, but not number 1. That's
good.
Well, they also placed it on their, they placed God Save the Queen 175 on their list of 500 greatest songs of all time. And then it's also on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's 500 songs that shaped rock and roll.
Has to be. To be.
Yeah. Because it did do so much.
What an amazing tune, But I just thought so many things came together to make it all just kind of just really explode in this one moment. Yeah. I don't think you could ever orchestrate it again to do just so well. I mean, I guess these things just had to almost happen organically, so.
Yeah, that's what makes it like so influential, because it's just real in real time.
It is. So you said there was a parody of this or some kind of...
Yes. Well, first I want to point out...
Yeah, good.
When the Queen died last month...
Yes.
Did you see that Lydon came out and was like...
He said she was a human being.
Well, but he said that he wanted to distance himself from any Sex Pistols activity which aims to cash in on Queen Elizabeth's death.
Oh, nice.
So, referring to the song.
That's pretty decent, right?
Well, he said the timing for endorsing any Sex Pistols request for commercial gain in connection with God Save the Queen is tasteless and disrespectful to the Queen and her family at this moment in time. And his band members, his remaining band members, said, we don't know what the fuck he's talking about.
Really?
Sorry, the F he's talking about. We don't know what the F he's talking about. That way you can...
Yeah, there you go.
But they were like, we haven't done anything. The media just started playing it and revisiting it.
Right.
And they were like, we have not done anything to promote anything to make money.
No.
But he was like trying to be better than, which is part of why it makes me think John Lydon is kind of a jerk. Kind of a self-important jerk.
He can be. I watch him. I don't think I would want to hang out with him very much, but I find him constantly interesting. He's never boring, that guy.
He's interesting, but I just think he's kind of an egotistical jerk.
Well, that's
a little bit
very,
narcissistic.
very possible.
I mean, that's fine. It's just,
Steve Jones now has a radio show in Los Angeles that's called Jonesy's Jukebox. And You know, he was a real ruffian when he was a kid. His dad was a professional boxer, left when he was 2. He said he never felt wanted. He stole all the equipment so the band would have equipment. But now he's kind of doing a respectable thing out in Los Angeles, has his own radio show, and he's delightful. Jonesy's Jukebox is really good.
Huh.
He's got
Something
a great
to look
voice.
up.
Yeah, something to look up, something very cool.
I'll try to add a link to that in the show notes.
Amazing, as far as I know, that these guys lived pretty long, you know,
Yeah.
fairly prosperous lives. They look like the kind of band that was, other than Sid, they look like the kind of band that's just going to crash and burn all the way down. You know?
So as we start to wrap up, you made the point that I found a satire, like a parody. It was from the 1983 show SCTV.
Right.
Which had a lot of early stars.
I love that show.
Yeah. So they created a fictional band called the Queen Haters. And they created a song called I Hate the Bloody Queen.
It was like blatantly derivative.
Yeah,
Was that the idea?
Blatantly.
Yeah.
And so one of the lines is like, I want to drown the Queen in the seas off Argentine. I mean, it's just like so brutal, but it's worth looking up, and I'm going to include a link to this video in the show notes. But the lead singer who was playing Johnny Rotten was Martin Short.
Nice.
Always
funny, Martin.
The rhythm guitar player Eugene Levy.
Oh wow!
Yeah, from the recent hit show.
Schitt's Creek.
Yeah. And the drummer is John Candy.
Wow.
Yeah. And they perform I Hate the Bloody Queen. And the MC also is a Eugene Levy.
So I'm very interested in seeing this.
You've got to watch it. I watched it again today. But like the MC Eugene Levy's like all into it. And they keep cutting into the crowd and everyone's just like ticked off. And he's like dancing and stuff. And at the end he's like, they're really good. They're really good. And everyone else is mad.
Oh, great.
And he's the only one really embracing it. So it's really, again, go to the show notes. I'll put the link in there, and you've got to watch it. It's so worth watching. I had never seen it, had never heard of it. I watched SCTV a million years ago. Probably didn't even know who the Sex Pistols were when I saw it.
Right.
In the early 80s.
Do you feel like they were making fun of the Sex Pistols, taking a jab at Britain, making fun of themselves?
Probably taking a jab at all of it.
Yeah.
The people who embraced it, probably the Sex Pistols themselves.
Right.
I think they were just, the best comedy is the comedy that will make fun of everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't matter the political spectrum or the, political correctness of it. Make fun of everybody, and you never gonna get sued because, no one can say you're targeting someone.
Equal opportunity offender.
Right, exactly. Like if you hate everything, my old friend Woody, I always said, Woody doesn't discriminate. He hates everyone the same. It's sort of the same thing. If you're doing that kind of comedy show, you just gotta make fun of everybody.
Yeah. But I would implore anyone who hasn't listened to this album to put it on Spotify or whatever and let it roll from the first guitar chord. Album, yes. Yeah. From the first guitar chord, it is just on, and it is amazing, and it's
raw, and it's just
raucous. Yeah.
It's so cool.
Fantastic. So we're glad to be back together.
Yes, it's been a while.
Nothing like having a Carlsberg together and doing a little podcast. It's great. Season 2 continues soon.
And we're about to record something else after we sign off here. I'm going to eat the world's hottest chip, the Pocky One Chip Challenge.
So could we maybe link that to the show notes?
We can do that, yeah. We're going to probably pop that on my YouTube channel. So
yeah,
I'll add a link to that too.
There'll be a lot of crying and gnashing of teeth, I assume.
We'll find out. I don't know. I'm going to have a glass of milk nearby, so we'll see.
Are you going to have milk? Good, yeah.
Yes, I'm going to. I mean, I'm pretty brave, but I'm not that brave.
Well, you're what's considered a hothead, right?
I'm a hothead. I'm a
saucy lover,
yeah.
Right? So it's going to be
I
interesting.
eat hot stuff every day almost.
So
but I've heard this is really over the top. So
well, hopefully it doesn't disappoint us and is not too easy on you. You know, I'm sure
yeah,
it'll
that'll
be
be for
rough.
bad video. Yeah.
I just hope you don't go through a couple of days of.
Well, like you have a heart attack or what, you know.
Well, no, I don't think we'll do
My brain explodes.
I feel like you're too tough for that. So. But thanks for listening once again.
Yeah,
to the
we're
Rock
almost
and
to
Roll
3,000
Rabbit Hole.
downloads. We appreciate you all.
Yes.
Please stick around. We're going to record some more stuff soon. And we'll hope you'll come back to Rock and Roll Rabbit Hole.